In this video, I want to show you how you can reuse animation clips on different objects when you create them inside the animation view. Now, this is pretty easy to do, and I could just go ahead and just do it as a really fast demonstration, but at the same time, I kind of want to show you a trick. What if you animate something in your view, and it's animated, you're happy with it, but you decide at some point that you need to change its location by a little bit? It would be useful if we had already animated our sphere. If before we had animated our sphere, we had parented it to another game object, so that all of its animation values, all of those coordinates, were based on its location relative to a parent. We didn't do that, but all hope is not lost. What I'm going to do is create a brand new empty game object. I'm going to do that by hitting Control-Shift-N. And by the way, this is just kind of an extra tidbit I'm throwing out. It doesn't really have anything to do with reusing animation curves, but it will be useful in illustrating the point of reusing these curves. Let's hit Control-Shift-N and create a new empty game object. I'm going to name this, just for sake of argument, we'll just call it World Location. Now that brings it right down here to the bottom of our list, and I'm going to take its position and set it to 0, 0, 0. That game object is now sitting at the origin. Because when we animated our sphere, it wasn't parented to anything, all of the recorded numerical values that are embedded in its keyframes are based off of the origin. So if I was to take our sphere and parent it to the world location, and I'll show you why I did this here in just a second. If I hit play, it looks like nothing happened. So you're probably thinking, Zach, why did you go through all that much trouble? Well, you might have already kind of figured this out, but if you didn't, I'll make it really apparent. Let's make a new game object. I'll call this one, let's Control-Shift-N, and just for the fun of it, I'll call this one Not World Location. And we'll leave this guy right where he is, and we'll take our sphere and parent it. Oh, I didn't actually commit that, so let's make sure I hit Enter. So, Not World Location. And I'll parent my sphere to that instead. Now, if I hit play, it looks like our sphere went away. I have no idea where it went. What I'm going to do is pause my view, and here inside the scene view, I'm going to select our sphere and tap F. And you'll see that it has flown really far outside of our actual scene. Now, why is that, Lee?
It's because our animation was using world location to begin with, which means when we animated, it was already looking at an offset of about 152 and 117 in Z.
I'm going to stop you, because what you're doing right now is you're looking over at the transform values.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when we first animated this object, it wasn't parented to anything. And so we started off by animating it from values of around 150 something, and then we just increased its Y and then brought its Y back down. And all of those values were relative to the origin, because it wasn't parented to anything.
Right.
But now it is parented to something.
Yep.
And so all of these values are now relative to the location of the parent. But the values don't change. So in turn, our position has to change. So we end up flying away, because now instead of being 152 units away from the origin, we're now 152 units away from our parent.
Right, which is embedded in our keyframes.
Right, so that gets to be problematic. Now, what I'm going to do is unparent this from our not world location and parent it to world location. You might remember when I created the world location game object, I set its transforms to 0, 0, 0. Now, if I parent I'm sorry?
You're playing.
I'm playing. I am playing. Thank you for warning me. So let's go ahead and stop playing. Now I'll go ahead and take my sphere and parent it back over to the world location object, and we'll fly back over here. Now when I hit play, the sphere doesn't fly away. Now that was a lot of kind of fiddling around and reparenting things. And why would I go through that much hassle? Well, really just for one simple reason. So that now I can select the world location and I can offset it by a little bit. I can now slide this over in Z, and that's going to become really important here in just a moment. Now, I don't need my not world location anymore. What I'm going to do is now get into the meat of the lecture, where I want to show you how you can reuse keyframes. So we will go to Create, and I'm going to create, I don't know, anything will work. Let's make a cube. Now, onto this cube, I'm going to go ahead and put the animation component. So we'll go under Component, Miscellaneous, Animation, and we have our animation property here. I'm just going to grab our sphere anim and drag that right in like so. And let's go ahead and hit play. and they both go up and they both go down together. Now, without even really trying to, this just illustrated why I went through all of that trouble to create my little world offset, and which probably would have been a better name instead of world location. We could just call it world offset. But to really kind of help us see this, I'm going to jump into animation real quick. Let's take our default animation type and our wrapped mode, and let's set that over to, well, you can just ping pong or whichever. Now, with that done, let's go ahead and close this, hit play. Now, we see the two objects moving at the same time. They are both using the exact same keyframe information. However, the sphere has been moved over to the side because it is parented to another game object that has been slid over in Z. And the reason I did that was just so that the two objects weren't sitting on top of one another. If you reuse your animation clips in this fashion, and you don't have objects that are parented to anything in particular, if they're just sitting at the world, they will end up in the exact same location each time. Now, it's a little bit above and beyond, but I'm going to show you a way to kind of work around this. If you know that you want to be able to animate the position of objects in your scene, but you still know in advance that you want to be able to reposition those objects, always make sure they're parented before you create your keyframes. And I'm going to illustrate that now. We're actually going to come in here, take our world location, delete that, so we actually killed out our sphere. We're going to take our cube, delete that as well. I'm going to take my sphere anim, and I'm going to kill that. We don't even need that anymore. So all of this stuff is gone. Now, what we're going to do is create a brand new object that we know we want to animate. We can just pick a cube. It doesn't matter. It could be some mesh you've already brought in, but we're just trying to keep things very simple. Now, let's go into Window, open up the animation view, and we need to create a brand new clip for this, so we know how this works. So we'll call this reusable animation. Save. Now, I'm not going to add any keyframes. I'm going to go ahead and get this closed. All doing that has done is created my animation component for me. Before I create any animation whatsoever, I'm going to create an empty game object, Control-Shift-N, and we will call this cube location. Could be called anything. We'll just pick on cube location. We will parent our cube to the cube location. Now,
the neat trick is once you open up and click on the cube, look at its transforms.
They've all gone back to 0, 0, 0.
Which is what happened before, is because our animations were set in world position, where X was around 150 and Z was 117. When we had the world locator at that location, our animation was actually happening at a world location of 300 or about 300, and Z was about 235,
right,
which is way off of where our world was.
All of these crazy arbitrary values which do us no good, and they're actually hard to reference, and they can be very difficult to animate. But it's good to get the point across. It makes it easy to see how you can just jump into the animation window, drop down some keyframes, and get some motion. But if you know you want to be able to do it in kind of an easy-to-manage way, and you want to be able to move that object around from place to place, make sure it's parented before you try to animate it. Now, that said, we have our cube selected. Let's go into Window, jump into Animation. Let's grab just position Y. We'll keep this very simple, and we'll drop down our first keyframe. So let's make sure we're in record mode. Drop our keyframe, and what I'm going to do is go to 2 seconds or roundabout. It doesn't have to be exact. Drop down another keyframe. We'll come right here to the middle, and we'll just slide this guy up into the air, so that if I tap F here in the view, we've created a curve very similar to what we had before. So now with that, I can go ahead and just close this out. Actually, let's set this over to ping pong, so it'll just keep playing over and over again. Now, if I come in and hit play, our cube is bouncing up and down, which is great. But the great thing that, since it's parented in advance, I can grab cube location and I can move it around. Let's say we move it over close to where the campfire is. And we'll just, anywhere over here will do. Now we'll hit play and look at the campfire. And now he's still moving up and down, but it's relative to this brand new location because he was parented.
Right, and this allows another trick. If you go ahead and pause it real quick.
Mm-hmm. There, let me just hit Control-Alt-P so that we can still be staring at our box.
Oh, I was going to say, did I say pause?
You did say
Oh,
pause.
I'm sorry. My bad. Go ahead and stop it for a sec.
Okay, I'm sorry.
My bad. It is what, almost 5 in the morning now?
Yeah, no big deal. Go ahead.
Go ahead and duplicate our cube location.
Mm-hmm. So here inside the hierarchy view, we'll just hit Control D, and now we have a second copy of it.
Now go ahead and move it.
All right.
And now, yeah,
Someplace where we can actually see it.
Yep. Now go ahead and play it. And
Now,
here's the other advantage you get.
We have two of them. They're both using that same reusable animation clip, but we can put them in different positions.
Mm-hmm.
And we can do that with brand new objects. Anything that's actually movable via its transform can use that animation clip. Anything that's got position X, Y, and Z can make use of that animation clip. So as a really quick example, before we completely close out, and I realize I'm really I might be beating a dead horse, but I like to think I'm just kind of going above and beyond. Let's hit Control-Shift-N one more time, and we will call this guy Capsule Location. And then we will create a capsule, because that makes sense. And we'll parent the capsule to Capsule Location. Now, all I'm going to do is take our capsule, while I have it selected, come over Component, Miscellaneous, Animation. Now, before I do anything, take a look over on the right-hand side of your screen at our transforms. Position X, Y, and Z are all still set to 0. Now, of course, we add our animation component, grab our reusable animation clip, drop that on, and now just go ahead and hit play. Now our capsule is moving down at the same time as everything else. And we can reposition these anywhere we want them to go. Very useful, like let's say you have a model of, windmills. You have a level just full of windmills, like a power plant where you're doing like wind power. You can set up the one, animate the one propeller to spin, and as long as it was parented to some other object, you can now move that object around and place that windmill or duplicates of that windmill anywhere in your level.
Right, and if you get a little bit clever with the idea and expand upon it, you could actually take the cube location and then parent that to another one, take that cube location and animate it so it's slightly different. So instead of having both cubes or these three jumping up and down in the exact same
you could get a little bit of an offset.
You can get offset. Or in your windmill, you could rotate it so that the blades are rotating using the same animation curve, but at different amounts.
And that's something I'll just kind of leave for them to play with. Like I said, I think I've really taken this and beaten a dead horse with it, but it does show you how you can usefully reuse these curves, where if you didn't have anything parented at the beginning, that curve is really only useful for that one particular position. So that is going to wrap things up for this video and for our discussion of the animation view. So thank you very much.